Welcome to the Drapery. Dr. Chris Baker, DC here. Had an idea to do some more video here where I really hate writing articles, but I really like to review new sets when they come out. So my idea was to just run through the whole M15 set and just give my analysis on each card, and so I can skip over the crappy ones really quickly and talk more in detail about just what I think about the good ones. This is a scale that I like to go through numerically. It would be like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scale about how good the cards are. Strictly unplayable. Basically, you just can't play it. It's complete crap fodder. I don't know why they print cards like that. They say it's skill testing, but you're just hurting new players to the game that don't know how to play and don't know how bad those cards are, and make them feel bad when they do try to play them, and then people just make fun of them. It's stupid. Borderline unplayable. This is a card that's usually relegated to the sideboard. It's just so narrow, but it could be playable. It's a card that says like, for 1 red, destroy target defender, clear the path. Like, if defender decks seem to be huge in the meta, then this card like might be playable, but it's very, very unlikely. I added this category in last time, borderline playable. Basically, a card that's close. It's in between. Might be not well positioned or too risky. Might be hard to cast. Might be too situational. Might be, again, more of a side deck card, but you never know. Playable cards are staples. These are cards that you'll likely run into a lot when you're looking at M15 instead of M14 here. There's a big change on like what's playable. Certain cards are going to be playable once the whole previous RTR block rotates, and it's just Theros block. But right now they will not be playable because there's just too many good cards and the card pool is too deep. And then the last ones are the build around or the badass cards. These cards are just what you try to latch on to and build your entire deck around a lot of the times, or they just have such a huge impact on the game for what commons can handle, which is, very hard to find a card that like the other commons can't handle. But there's a few cards that fit into this category. Okay, so I got the spoiler figured out right here. It's 107 cards, alphabetical order, color order. So starting with white, Divine Favor. Again, trying to look through this list is what I'll try to keep to. This card it's actually in the middle. I guess if I made this a 10-point scale, like 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10. Guess I'd put this in between here as like a 2 to 3. You can search it up with Heliod's Pilgrim, which is coming up. And the toughness stats are actually really good on certain creatures. If the creatures have lifelink, like Child of Night or Sungrace Pegasus, sometimes it gets them out of burn range, or the cards like a Crone Crusader, like it just gets them out of combat range, and it triggers heroic. So this card is actually pretty solid in decks that can race and decks that don't have the ability to bounce your creatures or remove your creatures very easily, but it's obviously pretty bad if they have like Pacifism or Grizzly Spectacle, Death's Approach type effects. Ephemeral Shields. This card is sadly strictly unplayable, even though you can cast it for free. When you have a Johnny's Presence and God's Willing in the format, I do not think this card is close enough to being playable. Heliod's Pilgrim. This is actually very close to being a build around me card, because it searches for everything. You can just find Ethereal Armor, the best card in the deck, with this and cast Ethereal Armor, put it on this. It searches for auras, so I do not think it can search for bestow creatures. because they are not auras. Actually, I don't know. I have to check that. That would be too good, I think. But other than that, you can find stab wound. So I think I will explore using him in my black-white control deck with like stab wound and quag sickness. It's such a good value creature, and just random body seems good. So he's definitely on that 7 to 9 point scale, I'd say, because he finds the other cards, which are the really good cards in your deck. Skirmisher. This card's just gets outclassed by other cards at the same converter mana cost. Doesn't have evasion. Just 1-drops aren't good enough, so I would just say this guy's unplayable. Mark Bonner, another good target with Heliod's Pilgrim, but only really solid if you're putting on creature with lifelink. But +2 vigilance is really good. Knightly Valor for 1 more mana though gets you another creature. So this card's like close, but I'd say it's like borderline unplayable. Some decks might get away with it, but Meditation Puzzle, yeah, gain 8 life, yeah, unplayable. Midnight Guard, if there were any Power of Fire or like Presence of Gond, tap target creature, make an effect. Yeah, with Presence of Gond, jeez, this card is infinite 1/1s. Other than that, I can't think of too many. You have flash creatures that can make it untap, but it's just really underpowered. So without other support, this card's unplayable for 3 mana. Impressive Raise is just a reprint. There's pacifism in the format. This card's already not good, so. Oresco Swiftclaw. Daring Skyjack exists. It's a reprint, not playable. Pillar of Light. I actually like this card. This card's very similar to Last Breath in that a lot of the 2-power creatures will have 4 toughness, gets like Grey Merchant, gets Perilous Shadow, like Frostburn Weird, Nivik Cyclops, any of the heroic creatures that just get big, just like Wingsteed Rider, plus Ethereal Armor type thing. It does cost 3, which is significant, and it misses some creatures that are like 3/3s and whatnot, but I think it's a very good sideboard card. So I'd say this is it's playable, but it won't be like a main deck card. So it's just borderline playable, and it'll be in sideboards and be very good against certain matchups. Raise the Alarm. This card is so much better than it looks. I've been actually playing. I played my first event today, blue-white. I call it Spirit Mancer, basically just triplicate spirits and Archaeomancer, trying to just cast as many of those as possible. And this card just constantly gets run into. People just run their 1/1s, their 2/1s, and whatever when I'm on the draw into it. And so it just, one of the dudes kills their guys, the other one sticks around, pings them a little bit. It also just helps convoke the triplicate spirits out even sooner. This card is really good. I would say it's just a solid playable. Razorfoot Griffin, it's unplayable, just costs too much. Isn't big enough for what it does. Sanctified Charge, this card again for the effect. I've tried playing it. It's such a good effect, but really hard to cast for the aggro decks. When there's Fortify in the format, which just helps you win the game faster when you're stuck on low lands. I just want this to be good in like the white mirror match, where they jam all your guys into all your guys, they fortify, you Sanctified Charge. It's like a good retrick, but costing 5 is just too much. I think you'd just rather have more creatures or more interactive spells. So right now my verdict on this is it's like borderline playable, but probably closer to borderline unplayable. Selfless Cathar, on the other hand, is a good Convoke enabler, can get in some early damage and protect you against Shrivel. All in all, it's not aggressive enough and requires all the other tokens and mana in play though, so I think it's borderline playable, but not good enough in my decks for the 1-drop slot. I like right now I'm running that Cloudfin Raptor and Loyal Pegasus. Like, you have evasion creatures, even in mono white you want more like Hopeful Eidolon, Nyxborn Shieldmate. Those cards are just strong. Some offerings a reprint, but there's Keening Apparition, Revoke Existence to deal with the Auramancer shenanigans, so this card's just not playable. Soulmender, not playable. There's no life gain tricks. There's no Johnny's Primate at common or anything. No Wall of Limbs at common. Again, these are sick combos in M15 drafts. Or limited, but not for M15. Standard Pauper. Okay. So Sungrace Pegasus is actually a fine playable. Really sick with Ethereal Armor. Sick with any pump spells. Just having lifelink on it is great. Like Mark by Honor would be good on it. Again, but you have Observant Alseid. So just play cards like that with this and it's great. Talish Missionaries, cost too much, not big enough body, unplayable. Triplicate Spirits, best common in the set. Build around badass, 10 out of 10. This card is the real deal. It has evasion, so the tokens just chip away. They let you chump block for infinite turns. It can be returned with Archaeomancer. I've had games where I'm stuck on 4 land, but it doesn't matter because you played Raise the Alarm on turn 2. You power out Triplicate Spirits. If you have one more creature, actually, no, that's all you need. Raise the Alarm into Triplicate Spirits, into Archaeomancer. Now you have 2 soldiers, 3 spirits, Archaeomancer in play. So when you get Triplicate Spirits back, you can just cast it all with Convoke. The same turn. It's just really broken. It's either like game 1, it's either like counterspell or just get crushed by the card advantage that creates, because it's not advisable. I would not play Shrivel or Electricity main. But sideboard wise, you can deal with that a lot better, but I suspect people will be gunning for that because it's so powerful and they'll be prepared with that in their sideboards now. But that's my game plan. My game plan is trying to make 1, 2, 3 spirits as many times as possible. Alright, on to blue. Ornat Tinkerer. This card is underpowered, and there's just not enough good artifacts in the format right now. If Bestow, as a sub-enchantment theme, if like Khans of Tarkir has like a sub-artifact theme to all its random creatures and stuff, then a 2/3 flyer for 3 is just solid. Godzo plays whatever. Sunspire Griffin is 2/3 flyer for 3, but it costs 2 white. And that's playable, but this card's just better than Cloud Elemental if you can keep it flying, so I'd imagine right now he's unplayable, but he might be playable if artifacts become more supported. Path Mage just costs a little bit too much right now. So again, quite unplayable, but might change. I'm uncertain about him, but yeah. There's just plenty of evasion, and he's easy to kill. Costs too much. Chronostutter, unplayable. Griptide's unplayable, so that doesn't bode well for this card. Colbert, it's actually really good in M15 limited, but kind of weird. Are you trying to be defensive? Or offensive against blue decks? Maybe it's a sideboard card against blue decks that, the problem is just like you want to be blocking their Welkin turns and stuff, and this doesn't do that. It doesn't even block a 3/2 very well out of like a red deck. So, not seeing this card as being playable. Divination's reprint, it's very playable, it's good. Encrust, falls into the pacifism category, but it's much worse and completely unplayable, in my opinion. There aren't any activated abilities that are broken in the format at all. It's more just like playing big creatures or having creatures with awesome comes into play abilities. That's basically it. There's no pingers. There's no creatures that tap, pay mana to deal damage or to destroy anything. So, not a good effect. And if they have vigilance, this does absolutely nothing. Frostlinks. Now this card is very playable. I like it. It's a color reprint of Core Hookmaster from white. This card's sick with Peel from Reality. It's a 2/2, so it doesn't get blown out by all the things that sweep the X1s. Evolves your Cloudfin Raptor, just, lets them not block, lets them not attack. So basically, and then not block a second time around. So you play it, tap it, can't block, beat down. They can't attack, and then you attack one more time, so you get 2 attacks in and 1 no attack in by that creature, which is just a ton of value against decks that are trying to make one creature pretty big. So against the Ethereal Armor decks, pretty good. Fugitive Wizard. Now, if you're playing M15 draft and you're playing military intelligence, this card's actually playable. You go turn 1 Ornithopter, Fugitive Wizard, turn 2 military intelligence. That's actually a deck. My friend Chris Bruner lost on stream to Polchion because he never drew his intelligence, but if he drew his intelligence, it would have crushed. Otherwise, unplayable. Standard Pauper. Glacial Crasher, cost too much, unplayable. Hydro Surge, too narrow, unplayable. Invisibility, walls are not a thing, unplayable. Mind Sculpt, slight upgrade to Tomb Scour, almost irrelevant, but yeah, so it's borderline playable. I saw Chris played a blue-black mill deck running 4 of these and 4 Tomb Scours. He's just playing aggressive milieu dot deck. It can't be good because the card doesn't do a single thing until they're dead, and you're enabling Oromancer and Archaeomancer to get insane value. So I would not be running this card. It's like a one of in the main again in the blue-black creature list of Mirror Mill. You can get rid of the Tomb Scour if you want. Although that card might be a little bit better because you can slip it under counter spells. Yeah, I'd say good sideboard card against control decks, though, potentially when they're both trying to mill each other out. Negate, reprint, playable sideboard card. Nimbus of the Isles, there's better cards at 5 mana, unplayable. Peel from Reality, this card is actually, it's a build around me card. It's not as powerful as like a 5 out of 5. It's like the lower level of a build around me, because it enables you to interact with all the heroic decks, which is what I like using it for. And it gives you the rebuy effect on things like Frostlinks, Archaeomancer. It lets you block, like chump block with any guy on their huge guy, and then bounce your own guy to replay it, so you get a second chump blocker. Also, it kills tokens, so it kills your own tokens, but usually you hopefully have a creature in play. It lets you make your Cloudfin Raptor bigger after you replay something and evolve it again. This card just, it really does it all. There'll be some matchups where it's bad, where you don't have creatures in play because they have too much removal in the early game, or they don't play any creatures, so it doesn't do anything. But overall, very good card. Look out for it. I, again, played this card today and had a number of blowouts. My best one was, guy attacked, he had 2 creatures, and I had 1 creature in play with 4 mana open. He was mono red. He had like a Foundry Street Denizen and a Sigiled Skink, and one of them had Madcap skills on it. He plays Madcap skills on the other one and attacks with both, and basically the if I didn't have exactly what I had, I was dead. So my play was flash in Deputy of Acquittals, don't pick up my other guy, double block the Sigiled Skink, which was a 5-1. So I was blocking with the Azorius Arrestor and Deputy of Acquittals. And then I was going to take 4 from the Foundry Street Denizen and Madcap Skills. But I was at 6 lives, and his last card in hand was Rebel Bout Maka, so he just blood rushed, went for the kill, and I had the peel. Peel picking up my deputy, bouncing his Foundry Street Denizen, basically like 3 for 1ing him. Trading my 2-1 with his 5-1. Being able to like play another Archaeomancer or play another Frost Lynx to tap his guy, play a deputy, in response to any removal so that my guys never die and I get to rebuy that effect. It was absurd. Okay. So that's how much I like Peel. Awesome. Research Assistant, effect costs too much. Might see play post-rotation, but not likely. I'd say unplayable. Statue of Denial, there's too many cheap counter spells. This costs too much. Countermand exists too, so unplayable. Void Snare. Sorcery is just the nail in the coffin here. You can't save your own guys. And non-land permanent isn't relevant enough, so there just aren't that many that matter. So I'd call that not strictly unplayable, but that's as close to unplayable as you can get for a full card. Welcome Turn is very playable. Vaporkin is already in the format, but nobody's playing it. It's even less playable now that Triplicate Spirits is in the format. So it's like borderline playable, but it's a caustic environment for it. So nobody will play it. Yeah, so don't expect to see them. Other cards. I could see it if there was a mono blue tempo deck. Maybe they would splash red for Electrickery to deal with the white tokens, guys. Maybe that's the deck. Mono blue, splash red, like super blue red aggro. Curse Spirit reprint. Not playable in my opinion. It could be good. If it was a 3/2 flyer for 4, 3/2 unblockable for 4, it's just too easy to kill, it costs too much. Situationally good, but black is very popular and can trade with this card easily, like Grey Merchant and whatnot. Black Cat's actually pretty sweet with Altar's Reap. Don't think it's quite good enough because it doesn't trade with enough creatures. It does. If it had like flying or reach, it'd be insane. But as is, I think it's not strictly unplayable, but as close to unplayable as he gets. Carrion Crow is a good card, but I think it's unplayable because he'd rather have like Death Cult Rogue. It's better for the Black Devotion cards and harder to block. This is a zombie though. That's, I guess, not relevant, but coming to the play tapped is kind of bad too. So yeah, not a fan. Child Knight reprint, pretty unplayable. There's just better options at that slot. Covenant of Blood. Here's a first cool card, because this deck, or this card, could go into the white-black deck. Convoke. +4, -4 in life is a huge swing. It can kill big creatures, but the reason why I like this card is because it can go to the face, and so it enables some sort of black-red aggro deck that can just burn people out and win races. See, the problem with black-red is they don't have good ways of dealing with like Hopeful Eidolon. But yeah, this could be a good card. I would say it's close to playable. Not sure. I haven't seen anybody play it. It just costs too much and isn't the best. So I'll say it's right under playable. I'll say it's borderline playable. Crippling Blight, it's another reprint. It's actually a good card, but when there's Stab Wound and Quag Sickness in the format, you just mono red is like not that oppressive. It's just you don't need it. I wouldn't say it's unplayable, but it's borderline unplayable just because there's so many better options. Eternal Thirst, I saw someone playing this in a white-black aggro deck. I think it was Beanick Bobby. Lifelink, it just doesn't pump you any power. It can give you a heroic trigger, but just play a Bestow creature. This card doesn't cut it for me. Even though you can search it up, just play Mark of the Vampire if you're going to play this effect. So yeah, unplayable for me. Fester Gloom, this card's going to be very important. It's like the anti-build around. So it's like a 5 out of 5 sideboard card. Mainly why it's potentially better than Shrivel is that if you have any black creatures that are X1s, then they do not die. So if you're running like Child of Night or Typhoid Rats or something, or Black Cat, they would not die. So this card's pretty good against those white tokens. Flesh to Dust, this card might be important after the rotation, but right now there's Grizzly Spectacle, which costs less, does the same, almost the same thing, because artifact creatures aren't relevant. And yeah, this costs too much. If this card costs 3 mana, it'd be, murder. And that card was good. But even then, tough one. Mind Rot, another reprint. It's an okay sideboard card, but it's often a dead draw. But if you've never lived the dream of like double Mind Rot someone, just like win very easily from there, it's usually pretty fun. So I'd say it's borderline unplayable. You can sideboard it against certain control decks and get away with it. Necrobite, another reprint. It's unplayable. Doesn't do enough. Necromancer's Assistant. Now, if the green-black self-mill graveyard deck with Center Wayfinder were to exist, this card would go in it, but it's 3/1. If this card was like 3/2, I think it could be played. But 3/1, it just dies to everything. Every dumb little creature. And the problem is that it can't block every dumb little creature. And 3 cards to libraries is not the kind of value you want. There's like Gravedigger's not common, so I don't think this is a playable or a build around type card. You have Krufus's Insight, and this is not an enchantment either to do that role. Rot Feaster Maggot. This card is at 5 out of 5 in limited. This card just crushed in our Team Sealed deck at GP Portland and Team Drafts. I've been crushing with this card. It's so good. Stops every attacker, gains life, it messes with their graveyard. It's perfect. In Standard Pauper, it's probably not playable, but it might be sideboardable in a mono black or a black white control deck because it can rip Oromancer and other bestow creatures like Hopeful Eidolon out of a white deck's graveyard that tends to be playing black for Font of Return. So I'll keep this on my radar. I think it's borderline playable. It's a bit expensive and doesn't impact the board very much though. Like it can't even get past a Grey Merchant, so it doesn't have flying either, so we'll keep that on the radar. Shadowcloak Vampire, another card that's actually very good. A 4/3 flyer for 5 is very, very solid. The life paying is often a drawback, but when it's not, when you're just ahead on the race, it's awesome. So this card's too expensive for Standard Pauper though. So I will call that guy unplayable. Sign in Blood, again in mono black, where Read the Bones exists, and the life loss from this is a little rough. It actually doesn't quite do enough. A lot of these decks are, mono red, mono white, blue white, they're just beat down and aggro. Card advantage is not king. So if I was going to play straight mono black, I'd probably try this card out, but I'd be looking to play like, Devour Flash or Basilica Screecher or Freakish Cure on turn 2, not necessarily Sign in Blood, but it is kind of like the glue that can hold it together, and hits your land drops, your removal spells all cost like 2 or 3 mana, so I could see it being good. I'll call it playable, but it's perfectly correct to not play it. Alright. Typhoid Rats, I saw the guy who won the event today, SPDC 26.01. He played a few of these guys. I actually think in this meta that they're unplayable. They don't have flying. They don't get in that much damage. Again, I'm playing Raise the Alarm, so I just killed it very easily. It doesn't have evasion. Like, just play Death Cult Rogue and Basilica Screecher and other removal spells. If green was a big part of the format, which it is not, then this card is better. But yeah, can't even block anything with ethereal armor on it or whatever. It's just, I don't think it's good. Unmake the Graves. Now you got the black font. March Returned already exists. This could cost less, and it's an instant, but right now the black font just is. Again, if the self-mill deck was there, this card could be good. It is an instant, which is good against, or good with Archaeomancer type decks, but I'll call it borderline unplayable, just not good enough. Witch's Familiar, unplayable. Zoffshade, saw some guy play this in a practice match against me, and I just Pillar of Lighted it. But this card, it's not as good as Perilous Shadow, so it's unplayable. On to red. Blast Firebolt. There's no relevant equipment really in the format, so it costs too much. Unplayable. Explosive Impact also does, for the same mana, 5 damage to a creature or 5 to the face, which is a lot better. Borderland Marauder. This card is, in most ways, just straight better than Gore Clan Rampager, or Gore House Chainwalker. Yeah, it's a different card. Mainly because it can block 1/1s, and can block at all. Yeah. Sometimes the other card can block as a 2/1, but it's almost always being unleashed as a 3/2, and this one is the same on offense. So yeah, I like this guy. He's one of the only good red 2-drops. Clear Path, reprint, again, unplayable until Defenders become a thing. And even then, probably still unplayable because there's other removal spells that aren't conditional. Crowd's Favor is pretty good, but there's like Titan Strength in the format, which is just damage. If you're anticipating your creatures being blocked, then the blowout effect of this is really good, but it's not like people are blocking with their bomb rares. It's like they're blocking with some stupid creature. So you'd rather have a better combat trick. Dyna Charge or Rouse the Mob, or probably Titan Strength is the best. So it's like not stone unplayable because it's a good combo or combat trick that might get people to do things. It might be better in red white when you have flyers running into each other, and then when you like when they go to like pump their guy and then you pump yours too, but yours gets first strike, so you basically 2-for-1 them. Can be pretty good. Except then again, God's Willing and Johnny's Present does not match up well against, so yeah, probably unplayable. Forged Devil is actually pretty solid. There's a ton of X1s in the format that you can kill. The problem is that the one red, 1-1, you can't run it out there early, and you can't really expect it to do much against every matchup, so it's kind of a sideboard card. So in that sense, it's not main deckable, so it's borderline playable sideboard fodder. Pretty good in like a red mirror deck to kill things like this. Foundry Street Denizen. Another reprint from Gate Crash. The card is a playable, sort of a build around type card in mono red aggro decks because red tokens make this card very good. There's no Krenko's command, but if Krenko's command existed, this card would be really good as a 3-power attacker on turn 2. Yeah, Generator Servant. There's just nothing in the format that you want to be like 2-for-1ing yourself to power out that can't be interacted with for less mana. Like you could get a 4 or 5 drop and then they immediately just like pacifism, Quag Sickness, Peel from Reality, like whatever. And so a 2-mana 2-1 on its own just not good enough. Play that in a format with real limited with bomb rares. In this format, unplayable. Goblin Rough Rider, yeah, unplayable. Hammerhand, I like this combo M15 limited with invasive species and Hammerhand. Could be good. Ooh, in green red heroic. Play Hammerhand, Inferno Fist. Like at all the green heroic guys that get like +2/+2. Invasive species. So you just make it so they can't block. You hit them for a ton. Play invasive species, pick it up, play it again, make your guy bigger. Yeah, play Ranger's Guile so that they can't target your guy. Yeah, the Hammerhand is playable, I think, in green-red. Beatdown, heroic. Even in just red heroic, it's like borderline playable. I don't know. It doesn't do that much against tokens or decks that can just play bounce spells or removal spells. But if they're trying to block or race you, I can see Hammerhand being playable. You can search for it for the Heliod's Pilgrim as well. In a red-white aura-based deck, but it's close. Probably not powerful enough, but I think somebody might play it. Inferno Fist. This card is actually really good. M15 limited, but probably not quite good enough. For Santa Pauper, I'll call it, again, like it's a borderline playable. Just a little mana intensive. Again, I like it in red-white, where you can search for it with Heliod's Pilgrim. You can play it with Sunspire Pegasus. And, 3/2 lifelink is solid, but you just get blown out by, Celestial Flare if you ever tap out for this or any other removal spell or bounce spell. So it's really like a 3-mana card. You don't really want to play it on turn 2. But in a red deck, you could go like 1-drop and then play this, attack, and then if they don't kill your guy, then just always leave red open to just like have a free shock that's getting in 2 extra damage if they can't block. But seeing that scenario, it's like so many things are already going right. Do you really need this card to like do it all? Like anything you have will be better. So, I think the times where it's slightly better than shock or whatever, or lightning strike might be relevant. Again, Sunspire Pegasus, cards with lifelink. Might make it relevant. Alright, Krenko's Enforcer. It's actually, again, another great M15 limited card. Don't think it hits hard enough or fast enough for what red is trying to do. I typically just want to play Minotaur Skull Cleaver on 3. Just bash for 4, immediately haste. Oftentimes they can't block very favorably anyway, so this card's just like a little too slow for what red is trying to do. But, it's easy to kill as well, so I'll say it's like borderline playable, but probably won't be playable. Lava Axe, I think this was an M14 or something too. Just, it's unplayable. It's just too situational. Lightning Strike. I'm trying to think. Not very many decks are playing this right now, even though it's very good. So very playable, but red decks just are out of favor right now. So I guess it's because there's so many creatures that can, like, you can just get them back. And burn spells aren't that great at finishing players off because there's so much life gain in the format. There's Extort, Hopeful Eidolon, there's Centaur Healer, Cerulean Gatekeepers, so many things. Sungrace Pegasus now. Miner's Bane, yeah, too expensive. Never seeing play. Ravaging Goblin, there's just no really, like, red control deck that wants this effect. You'd rather just have, again, huge haste attacking creatures with 3 mana. Scrapyard Mongol, I like this as a top end. Again, if artifacts were supported like Bestow enchantments are supported, but it's not. So I'll say unplayable now, and then if artifacts get supported in cons by red, I think red-blue will, in cons, should have an artifact sub-theme. That would actually be pretty cool. And at that point, then it's like borderline playable. It still costs a lot. But a 5/3 trample for 4 is pretty solid. 4/3 haste for 5, Thundering Giant. This got common shifted in Modern Masters, and it went into my commons cube because it's good as a 4/3 haste for 5. But 5 mana is not where red decks want to be, so unplayable. It costs too much. Torch Fiend, killing artifacts is unimportant. You'd rather have any other 2-drop. Unplayable. Wildfire, pretty good if you're defensive in red. M15 limited, like against the Krenko's Enforcer, but I will say unplayable. On to green, Carnivorous Moss Beast. This guy is the slow, like, I love it. 7 mana, +1/+1 counter. That's like about as fast as moss grows or moves. It's great. It's a beast, so you can actually grow it to Abdicate of the Beast. That's faster than paying 7 mana, but yeah, unplayable. Charging Rhino, yeah. There's a 4/4 for 4, not 5, so Rumbling Baloth, unplayable. After that rotates, probably still unplayable because green is bad and it just, everything dies. Always mistake, it's already in the format, nobody plays it. So despite how good this card is, green is not playable currently. But this is a playable card in green. Hunt the Weak is just too slow. I call it borderline unplayable. You might be able to get it in some deck lists, but maybe not. Hunter's Ambush was hidden gem of M15 limited in green decks only, but this card is a huge blowout, similar to Safe Passage. You just block, set up all these trades, they play a couple of tricks to save their guys, or to pump the rest of their team to kill you, and you go, oh, Fog, plus eat all of your guys. Solid card. I could see it in a mono green deck that's playing against other creature decks that's just trying to, like, race. But it's really bad against Vigilance. Like, you need your opponent to, like, tap out for attackers, block, and then they fortify, and then it's like, sweet, Hunter's Ambush, don't die, crack back for the win. That's what you're looking for it to do. So in that sense, it's a playable card, probably borderline playable in terms of it's probably only relegated to sideboard against those type of matchups. Like, it's awful against control decks. So Invasive Species, this card is great. It actually has a lot of implications. I like the 4-color control deck that, I think, who was it? Was it My Galaxy? Somebody was playing it. Just picks up Gatekeepers, picks up Radiant Fountain, picks up, Centaur Healer, picks up so many cards. It just does it all. 3/3 for 3 as well. This card is, again, it's a build-around card. It's not powerful enough to be a 5 out of 5, but it's a build-around card. Like this with Peel from Reality, and then just all the enter battlefield effects make it good, and it blocks almost everything on the ground, like on turn 3, except for Ethereal Armor type things. So, he's solid. Living Totem. Probably not good enough. He's solid in that he can come down decently early, but he's only a 2/3 for 4, and there's no way to pump him in green. I've liked him with the green Paragon and M15 limited, but plus encounter is just not that big a deal when there's Ethereal Armor to pump creatures in the format. And it costs too much to replay with Invasive Species and Peel from Reality and stuff. So I think it's borderline unplayable. Somebody might try it and be successful, but Naturalize, reprint, it's a borderline playable sideboard card. Netcaster Spider, it's actually pretty good, but I think Deadly Recluse is just better in almost all aspects of what you want the card to do. Because when a card is getting more than 4 toughness, this is blanked, where as long as it doesn't have first strike, the Deadly Recluse can always deal with it, and it's lower on curve, and a green card like this doesn't care about attacking too much. You have other cards to attack. This one's usually on defense. So I think it's borderline playable, but not exciting. Plummet, again, when I played I did a team draft against Grand Prix San Jose champions David Williams, Matt Sperling, and Paul Reitzel, and for some reason DW passed me 3 triplicate spirits in that draft, and it was really funny. After game 2, I think he beat me game 2. I beat him game 1, but in our game 3 of the draft, I nut drew him, but I think he had 3 plummets sided in, and Sperling just made fun of him so bad. He's like, well, he's like, it's a good thing that you prepared for the triplicate spirits matchup with your sideboard choices of 3 plummet, 3 for 1 yourself against 1 triplicate spirits. Great. He had some quicklings and some other things, but I just made so many tokens and just overran them. That didn't matter, but this card is playable. It's situational sideboard, so I'd call it, it's just a borderline playable sideboard card. Ranger's Guile is actually really good in the green-white. It's a playable in the green-white heroic deck, and even in the green-red heroic deck that I just started talking about, maybe starting to brew in my head. It just stops all those removal spells, gets a heroic trigger. +1/+1, sometimes relevant, but yeah. Solid card in that deck. Runeclaw Bear. There's a 3/2 for 2, and there's better cards, so it's kind of unplayable, too small. Syndic of Ties, is what white gets, and this is what green gets. It's just not fair how much better white is. Setter Wayfinder, this is another build-around card. The payoff of just what we'll see Undergrowth Scavengers is not good enough. It helps you hit lands. Feel it trades with, a Raise the Alarm token or other X1s. It just doesn't quite do enough. If Ghostly Flicker was in the format, I would like it a little bit more, because I really like self-mill when you can, you're just trying to find Flicker, whether it's in your hand or in your graveyard, because you have Archaeomancer, and the Unmake the Graves type effect. And you can, this card makes Convoke easier. So like if Ghostly Flicker's in the format, you have this, Unmake the Graves, Archaeomancer. It would be sick then, but without any real crazy way to get value, it's not good enough. So I say it's borderline unplayable, just not supported enough right now, but hopefully cons maybe will have better support for it. Shaman of Spring, this card costs too much. It's not Elvish Visionary, so you can't really pick it up with Invasion of Species easily. 2/2 for 4 is awful, so unplayable. Siege Worm, now this card's huge, and you can convoke it out early, so you'd think it's pretty good with, again, Raise the Alarm type convoke deck, but it's so easy to answer. It just dies to black and white removal spells and gets bounced easily. But if it sticks around, it's solid, but it doesn't have flying. Trample's good, but again, I'm going to call this a borderline playable. Somebody could play it, but I just don't think green is positioned. Like, you're spending 7 mana, and they can just pacifism it for 2. Or, Heliod's Pilgrim, search pacifism, stop your guy. Like, it's just so easy. Like, just no wonder white and black are just all over the place, because they're just the best colors by a mile. So, borderline playable. Hopefully green gets more support next format. Rotation. Titan Growth does not give Hexbrew. Plus 4/4 is solid, but I'd call that unplayable. Just doesn't do enough. Can be interacted with too easily. Undergrowth Scavenger, it's another badass build around card, but too easy to interact with again. Again, it has no other text other than it can be a 5/5 for 4 on turn 4 or 3. If you go like Elvish Mystic, Setter, Wayfinder, mill 3 creatures, and draw your land, and it's just, maybe the goal is to mill. Actually, let me think. In my bug defender deck, the win con would be Doorkeeper to mill them out, and you're milling them out with in blue-black with Psychic Strike and Pilfered Plans. So you could do a little bit of incidentally milling them, play removal spells, Grizzly Spectacle too, mill them, and then self-mill a little bit, Setter, Wayfinder, and maybe Necromancer's Assistant, and then have some Gatekeepers, have some Doorkeepers, and then maybe throw in this guy as just like a win con. He could be if you land this before they Crypt Incursion with a little self-mill and a little removal, this guy could be like a 10/10 for 4 mana. At which point, as long as cards stay in the graveyard, he dies, you get him back with Unmake the Graves or the black font. I guess you could run the black font with Auramancer, so you could play kind of like a junk self-mill deck. Our Remedio was playing a junk self-mill deck that had Auramancer and a bunch of bestow creatures. This card, watch out for it. It's a builder ass or build around badass card. But it takes so much support that I don't think the format quite has right now. So be on the lookout. Verdant Haven, reprint, Gate Crash, not quite playable. You want your fixing and ramp to happen before you get to 3, hopefully on 1 or 2 mana. Find Weft, again, sweet combo with Rummaging Goblin, because you just get it back for 5 mana, but just a heroic trigger and +1/+1, and to be able to reuse it, again, maybe in green-white, maybe in, maybe in green-white or green-red, heroic. Maybe it's just this constant late-game recurring heroic trigger. It's very underpowered though, so I'm going to call it borderline unplayable, but I'd like to see someone try it. Bronze Sable, yeah, it's unplayable. There's too many other good cards. Ornithopter is common now. Again, if artifacts get some support, and this card might make a splash someday, but without military intelligence and other ways to get advantage, don't see it being playable right now. Demerits Machine, costs too much mana, unplayable. Willforged Golem, very good card. I like just being able to convoke. Convoke is just such a strong mechanic. And a 4/4 is big, and this can block Intimidate guys. That's very relevant for M15 limited, but not this format very much, so I'd say it's borderline playable, but probably closer to borderline unplayable. Just, again, artifacts aren't relevant yet, but hopefully they get more support in cons. That's what I'm hoping for. These two lands are fantastic. Evolving Wilds is fixing in the format that is perfect. So now you have Guild Gates, which will be leaving soon, so hopefully some sort of dual land at common will exist, but probably not. But I in a previous article I wrote like 15 suggestions on common dual lands that are potentially coming into play untapped, which sounds broken, so you have to make the drawback pretty detrimental. So check that out in one of my previous articles. I wrote about it. It was really fun to try to design cards that are playable and not broken at that common duel that comes into play on tap. But Evolving Wilds perfect, smooths out a lot of the two-color decks, and especially the aggro decks. Even though you're taking a turn off the curve, I like thinning your deck of land and just ensuring that you have, turn 1 blue, turn 2 white, available to your deck. Radiant Fountain on the opposite spectrum, so I'd say Evolving Wilds just solid playable. Radiant Fountain, on the other hand, goes in the monocolor decks and is basically just starting the game at 28 life, which, is perfectly reasonable. There's not very many cards that require you to have triple of one color, so as long as you get 2 swamps or 2 plains in the beginning of the game, this card's great. Makes it really hard to race, so another incentive to play monocolor decks. Alright, and so these last few cards are like reprints from different sets, but they don't show up in booster packs, which is really weird, so they don't affect draft. Divine Verdict was a reprint from somewhere, and it cost too much, unplayable. Inspired Charge is very good. It costs a little bit too much for this +1, so I think Fortify is actually just better, because if they're going to shrivel you, it's more likely that you have 3 mana open, and you can just give your team +0/+2, which is going to be the same as +2/+1 anyway, because Shrivel Sorcery, they play it. This might be a little better against Electrickery, sure. If you're attacking and then they block, Electrickery, and then you play this. But I don't know. I'd call it a playable card in mono white tokens. But you have Fortify and Sanctified Charge. I think Sanctified Charge, if you're going to play this, you might as well play Sanctified Charge, because First Strike is like the mere breaker in white tokens jamming into each other, which I see as being a very powerful thing. Alright, Counterspell at cancel is, again, RTR, reprint. It's playable, but not good. So I'd say it's like borderline playable in some control decks. It's just the control decks aren't good. Walking Corpse, there's better 2-drops in black, so that's unplayable. Seismic Strike, ooh. Mono red decks have a way to deal with big creatures with this, but it doesn't deal damage to the face, so it only deals damage to the creature. I still say this is a playable card. Probably a main deck card, actually, and then I'd rather side it out, because there's so many creature decks in the format. So yeah, I'll give that a solid playable. I would try that out in my red decks, because it can deal 4 or 5 damage. Actually, here's the thing. If you have 4 mountains in play, then you can cast Chandra's Outrage, which is the same, and it deals 2 damage, you know? If you have 5 mana in play, then this is great, but dealing 4 versus 5 to a creature, just not that different. So, I changed my stance. I think it's like borderline playable, but probably will not be played. Corsair is another reprint. Don't know if it's in the format right now, but you have Centaur Healer in an invasive species, so you probably don't need this guy on turn 3, but I guess it's solid. I just don't see how, just big dumb green creatures that aren't even that big that just get outclassed by, Hopeful Eidolon, Ethereal Armor, and then like God's Willing and Celestial Flare, Pacifism, or just any of the black removal spells. So M15 overall, if you were to rank the colors, white is first by like a mile, because Triplicate Spirits is first by a mile. Second is close, but I think I give it to blue. I like Frostlinks and Peel from Reality, and Welkin Turns even playable. What else do we got? Trying to think, black or red. Red gets Lightning Strike, but Lightning Strike was already in the format, so it didn't actually gain there. It just gained another good 2-drop in Borderland Marauder. But you didn't really need him because you had Gorath's Chainwalker, so red is, again, pretty weak. So I'm going to give black the nod. Basically, just Fester Gloom is going to help against the white deck, so it's the anti-white. And potentially Covenant of Blood. Could be good. And then I'll give, I think, red the nod over green. Actually, no, never mind. I like the thought of invasive species, Elvish Mystic. Maybe Siege Worm. I mean, they kind of combo together. Like, a lot of these cards are better with other colors, so it's hard to take one color in a vacuum. But yeah, that was fun just to kind of go through the full set. Just look at the cards in the context of what the format is right now, and then what it will potentially be once we get rid of RTR block and M14, and then it's just this and a small set, just with the first set from Collins. So, interesting. I know it's probably a little hard to follow, a little crazy, but fun for me at least to just sit here and talk about them. Hopefully some people like to listen and learn a little bit, but overall, M15, like, just a very few cards that are exciting, and most of them are pretty unexciting. At least for shaking up the format, which you can't expect it to do when so many cards in the card pool. But yeah, so I think I'll keep trying to do more videos instead of articles, though. So keep it friendly, keep it fun. All right, thanks for watching or listening, guys. Thanks.